friends, I'm here today to make you some gluten-free sandwich bread. Of course, you could also just eat it with butter, make some toast, all kinds of things. But we're going to start with a large bowl and 2 cups of millet flour. And then we are going to add 1 cup of tapioca starch. 3/4 of a cup of ground flax meal, and I just spilt it on my oven. And let's see here, 1/4 of a cup of psyllium husk. If you saw my stem video for the slime, this is exactly what I used. And 1/4 of a cup of arrowroot flour. And 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And then you're going to whisk the dry ingredients together. And it is really some yummy bread. For those of you that are gluten-free, it really, just room temperature is not bad at all for a sandwich. I know a lot of gluten-free bread does need to kind of be warm, you know, to just be palatable, but this is really yummy, even just slicing it up and making a sandwich. Okay, then I'm just going to set this aside for a few minutes. And I am going to beat 2 eggs. In a separate bowl, obviously. And to that, I am going to add 1 tablespoon of honey. This is raw, local honey. And you definitely do not want to substitute your honey for a non-calorie sweetener. You definitely need the honey to make the bread rise. Okay. And then we are going to add 1/4 of a cup of avocado oil. You will use more avocado oil to grease your pan and grease your bowl for your bread to rise in. Let's make sure we got all of that yummy goodness out of there. Okay, and we are going to add 4.5 teaspoons of instant yeast. That's different than active dry yeast. You want the instant yeast. And 2 cups of lukewarm water. So about 110 degrees is great. And you're just going to whisk all of this together. And then you want to take a spatula and make a well in your flour mixture. And then pour all of the liquid mixture in. Oops, I didn't stir that up very good. My honey's in one big lump. I thought I did a good job. Okay. And then we're going to fold the dry and the liquid ingredients together with your rubber spatula. And I like to kind of smush down the lumps. It is a very lumpy, you can see there's a lot of lumps in there. The recipe didn't say to flatten them out, but I do like to mush them down a little bit. And your bread dough will not be like other bread doughs. It will not be real stiff and solid. It will be more on the liquidy side, as you can see here, but it will be held together. It won't be all separated and watery. It definitely holds together. If you've ever made batter bread, it's more like a batter bread kind of a dough. Seems like all my lumps are gone. My flour is incorporated to the wet ingredients very well. So you can see it's held together very well, but it is definitely wet and sticky still. And now we're going to take another glass bowl, and I put a little bit of olive oil in, avocado oil in the bottom, and I'm just going to spread it around with my little brush. And we're going to put the dough in here to rise. Okay, and put the dough in the bowl. Now you could add a little more millet flour if you think that your dough is not, if it's too sticky and not doughy enough. I do find that it does tend to crack a little at the top if it's too dry, too much flour. But if you do feel like you need more flour, you could add about 2 tablespoons at a time. But we will be kneading it later in flour as well, so you do want to keep that in mind when you are adding more flour, if you decide to go that route. But this is, as it sits a little longer, you see it's definitely thicker and more dough-like. Okay, I don't know if I bring that closer to you if you can see that, but it's definitely not coming off of the spatula. It's pretty solid stuff. Okay, now we're going to take some more avocado oil and just brush the top of the dough. And then cover this with saran wrap. I forgot to grab my saran wrap out of the cupboard, so I will do that after I pause the video. And I'm just going to sit it here on the back of the oven to rise for 30 minutes. My oven is on. I am cooking something else at the moment, so this is a nice warm spot to rise the bread dough. You could rise it in any spot in your house that's a little warm to help the bread dough rise. Sometimes an oven that you've turned on and then turned off, and maybe crack the oven door a little to rise it in there, or even just with the light on in your oven is sometimes just enough to keep it warm and help it rise. But we will pause this, and I will see you in about 30 minutes after this is risen till it's double. So it has been about 30 minutes. Our dough has certainly doubled. Can you see that? And yes, I did remember to put the saran wrap on after I had paused the video. But yes, see how full our dough looks now. So I'm going to remove the saran wrap, and I'm going to punch the dough down. Good way to take out some frustrations, right? And I am going to take a little bit of millet flour and sprinkle my work surface. And I just take and throw a piece of parchment paper on the counter. I know that I've cleaned the counters, but it just makes me feel better to work on top of the parchment paper. Maybe you want to work on top of a cutting board, or maybe it doesn't bother you and you want to work on your counter. You can go for it. And then you're just going to put the dough onto the millet flour. Get as much of it out of there as you can. And we're just going to knead it for a few minutes lightly. And if you're not familiar with kneading, you just kind of flip the dough over itself and push down with the heels of your hands, the heel of your palm. And if you need to put down some more millet flour, you can. But as you can see, this seems to be working very well. It's not too sticky on my hands, so the dough was a good consistency. I don't usually work at this end of my counter, but I needed to in order for the video, so I'm having a little trouble kneading. It doesn't want to knead quite as well as I'd like. My paper's twisting and turning on me. Shape it into kind of a log kind of a shape to fit into your loaf pan. And I did prepare my loaf pan ahead of time. Sorry, I'm not looking at you while I'm talking. I did prepare my loaf pan ahead of time. I greased a 9x5 loaf pan, and then I lined it with parchment paper as per the recipe. It's kind of sticky. I think I will go with just a tiny bit more flour. Pat it on there a little bit so I can knead into it. Ugh. It's just rather messy here. There we go. Okay. Most of my flour that I had put on kind of slid away. So there, that's much better. Okay. So, I'm going to take my pan and, like I said, turn this into kind of a log shape loaf and just plop it in there. Okay. I've got a lot of dough here that just didn't make it in, and I'm going to stick it in there, see if that works out okay for me. Okay, so I am then going to let this rest. The dough needs to rest now after kneading it for about 20 minutes. While the dough is resting, you can preheat your oven to 375 degrees and just let that be. And I will see you in 20 minutes. All right, so our bread has rested for 20 minutes, and as you can see, the dough, sorry, as you can see, it has risen actually even in that 20 minutes. It was not really visible from the pan, but now it is. So we're ready to put it in our 375 degree oven for 45 to 50 minutes. Let's give it a whirl. And I will set the timer for 45 minutes and we'll check it then. So it's been 45 minutes. Let's open the oven and check on our bread. Ooh, that looks very nice. It's lightly golden. I'm just going to tap it and see what it sounds like. Kind of as a hollowish sound. So that means our bread is done. We're going to take it and just set it on a cooling rack. I'm just using this rack here for setting the loaf pan on, and let it cool for a few minutes till you can handle the bread. Once you can touch the bread and handle it without burning your hands, you can remove it from the pan and continue cooling it on the rack. Once it is completely cool, you can slice it. You don't want to slice it while it's still too warm. It won't slice very well, and when you do slice it, a serrated knife is the best knife for slicing your bread. I'll come back and show you what it looks like when it's done cooling. I'm back to slice into our yummy bread. I just can't wait. So here it is. It is cool. Well, maybe not as cool as it should be, but I'm a little anxious. I want to have a tuna sandwich for lunch. So I am going to, I guess I'll slice and do it this way. And I am going to slice the heel off. And you can see how yummy that looks. Oh. And I'm just going to slice myself some bread. There we go. Can't wait to have a sandwich. So I hope you enjoy your gluten-free millet bread. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.